Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have more NBA free agency coming at you, including Donovan Mitchell signing a brand new 3-year, $150 million contract to stay in Cleveland. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Lakers, what they might do, as they've been very silent in free agency so far. LeBron left, presumably, to give them room to sign another big star, but they're kind of running out of options there, as their number one option, seemingly in Klay Thompson, now joins the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll talk a little bit about the Lakers there. We'll also move into some baseball, as we had the debut of some people's number one overall prospect in James Wood for the Nationals last night. We'll talk about how he did, what that means for the future of the Washington Nationals, as well as the Marlins cutting Tim Anderson. He got DFA'd today after an abysmal start, if this is the end of his career or it's just that Marlins feeling. And then we'll end our show talking a little bit about the U.S. men's national team. They were eliminated from the Copa America Cup yesterday after an abysmal performance, an embarrassing performance. We'll talk about what might result from this loss, not even making it out of the group stage here. Talking about all of that and more, starting in the NBA though. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Go ahead and throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today in the NBA, talking a little bit about Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs. The Cavaliers had a very interesting offseason, right? They make it to the second round, losing 5 games to the Celtics, a series that might have been competitive if they were healthy. Obviously they win game 2. It looked like they were going to be able to make it a little bit of a series. Donovan Mitchell gets hurt. Jarrett Allen doesn't play the whole series. So this is a team that has, a lot of promise. They were able to play the Celtics tight. It was probably the tightest series outside of the Pacers series that the Celtics had to play all playoffs long. Regardless, they got eliminated in the second round in 5 games after going 7 against the Orlando Magic. They then fire their head coach, JB Bickerstaff. JB Bickerstaff goes and joins the Pistons as the new head coach over there, and they hire Kenny Atkinson, a move that I really like. There was a lot of drama there. A lot of drama in the Cavs organization with Jarrett Allen, Donovan Mitchell, all of these guys, all four of their big stars reportedly wanting out at some point. And Donovan Mitchell obviously had a big part in choosing the head coach, which is why he does decide to re-sign here. This is kind of a peace offering. Shows all is well in Cleveland, or at least seemingly all is well in Cleveland now that you have Donovan Mitchell back on a 3-year, $150 million deal. He returns, and again, we've talked a lot in these last couple episodes about how the East is weak. The Celtics continue to get stronger. They are now paying almost $1 billion for their roster, right? They paid Drew Holiday earlier this season over $100 million. They paid Derek White over $100 million. They paid both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum over $300 million. Not to mention the rest of that roster. Those 4 players are making around $900 million total. It's an insane number. We talked a lot about how this free agency has been affected by the second apron, that this is the first time we're really seeing it happen. And this is a Celtics team that's spending. This is a Celtics team that is continuing to try and be competitive. And now they're looking at becoming for sale. And this is something that every team is gonna have to deal with soon. I really do like how the second apron is affecting the free agency so far. It's making it tough for these teams. I mean, the Celtics are doing it, but we already see the pressure of the organization becoming a little too much. They're again on the chopping block. They're apparently up for sale there. But getting back to the Cavs here, the golden goose in the East right now is the Celtics, right? And they gave them a tight series. If they're healthy, again, health is a big thing. They haven't gone out and made a big move. They haven't gone out and tried to improve the team too much, which might be, excuse me, which might be a little bit of a mistake, right? You see the Sixers reloading, they go and get Paul George. You see the Knicks reloading, they go and get excuse me. You see the Knicks reloading. There are teams that are trying to get better over teams in the East, over the Celtics here, and the Cavaliers are kind of standing pat. And it's fine to stand pat, but this is a team that needs to make a move. It doesn't have to be a big move, but they need to flesh out their roster. They need to be able to compete with the Celtics in, again, like we've been saying a lot, a weaker Eastern Conference, an Eastern Conference that is ripe for the taking as long as someone can get past the Celtics. It is wide open past them. And there's a bunch of different strategies. The Sixers are going for the old-fashioned big three. The Knicks are going with the anti-Celtics roster, bringing in Mikal Bridges there. And we'll see which one of them works. There's different strategies to it, but I do really like this Cavaliers team. What I am curious about is how they're going to play together, because that's been one of the things. They haven't always been healthy at the same time. Jared Allen is a huge part of that. If he can stay healthy, they can make a run. But Donovan Mitchell coming back, he's the offensive weapon. And we saw that a lot in the playoffs, right? Without Donovan Mitchell, this Cavaliers team had nothing going on offense. Darius Garland disappeared for entire series. He stepped up a little bit in Donovan Mitchell's absence, really kind of made the games close there down the stretch against the Celtics. But none of it was really that close. None of it was really to the level that you want, that you expect out of a guy that you are counting on as much as you were for Darius Garland. So this is a Cavs team that could use a little more offense, and step one to that is keeping the main offensive factor you have, and that is Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is a great player. Re-signing with the Cavaliers here on a 3-year, $150 million deal is huge for their future, is huge for them staying competitive in the East. They're still a relatively young team. It feels like they're a little bit older, but if Kenny Atkinson can get the most out of these guys, I think they could be one of those teams that, without adding too much, could be up for a big, much needed improvement for what they did, a big jump from where they were last season. Going from a 4 seed, I think maybe they stay in that top echelon of the East there, jump up to 3 or 2. We'll have to see what happens this season. But re-signing Donovan Mitchell is a good sign, showing that, hey, they don't need to blow it up. They don't need to let him walk. They can attempt to be competitive with this core. And that really was the concern when they were firing JB Bickerstaff and looking at moving on, hiring, Kenny Atkinson now. But anyway, I love the move. I think it's huge for the Cavs to be able to do that. We're going to move on to some Lakers talk here in the next segment. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Lakers will do. What are the Lakers going to do? We have a lot of all these big fish off of the board now, and LeBron James opted out of his player option, presumably so that they could add some talent around him and go for another championship. But they haven't done anything yet. Maybe they haven't been attractive enough to all these to other free agents, but they're kind of running out of great free agents to sign. We'll talk about who's left for them, what is a good fit for this Lakers team, and much more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the Celtics and about Donovan Mitchell signing a 3-year, $150 million deal to stay in Cleveland for the next couple of seasons. There's a player option there, really reinforcing the faith that this organization has in Kenny Atkinson, and I feel like that was kind of part of him being in that process of hiring a head coach. In this segment here, we're going to finish up our basketball talk for the day, talking a little bit about the Lakers. We did a lot of basketball yesterday, so for any other free agency stuff, go check out yesterday's show. But we are going to talk about the Lakers here and what they might do. Obviously, LeBron James opts out of his $50 million contract to give the Lakers, or presumably to give the Lakers, some cap space to go and sign a free agent, and they have yet to do that. In these first 2 days of free agency, there's very few great options left on the board. We'll go over some of the pieces that might fit there, some of the rumors of who the Lakers are going to spend their money on, and much more. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Go and throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Lakers here a little bit. And the Lakers always are a big topic of discussion, right? One of the biggest markets in the world, in LA, has the best basketball player in LeBron James. He's always in the news cycle there. Such a big market. He opts out of his contract. He declines his player option that would have been worth $51 million. Instead, presumably, again, we don't know exactly what the reasoning behind it is, presumably to give the Lakers a good amount of money to work with, right? And they were targeting, or reportedly targeting, Klay Thompson, and he gets traded, sign and trade, to the Mavericks, so he doesn't really have a choice there. But now you're looking down a list of who Now you're looking down a list of who the Lakers might go get. And it's not a great looking list. Now, this is just free agency. This is outside the realm of a trade or anything. But if you're just looking at this money and trying to get a guy in free agency, some of the top free agents left, obviously LeBron James is still there, but you've got DeMar DeRozan, who has been heavily rumored to go to the Lakers, which I think that'll work well. DeMar DeRozan is a guy that doesn't need to have the ball in his hands at all time. And while, yes, he is a little bit of a liability on defense, his scoring output is is great. He's got a great mid-range shot. His ability, it's not going to stretch the floor too much, but it is going to provide a little bit of spacing here for Anthony Davis down low. You drafted Dalton Connect, who can hopefully effectively space the floor there. I'm a big Dalton Connect believer here. I think that was a steal of a pick at number 17 in the draft. I'm still shocked he fell that far. But this is a team that needs a lot to go well. This is a team that needs scoring. And again, you're looking at this board outside of a guy like uh outside of a guy like DeMar DeRozan. I mean, who else is out there? You could take a flyer on, Buddy Hield. Maybe he can get his 3-point shot back and be, a reliable guy, but you're not going to give him big money. Uh there's nobody else. Some of the top free agents available outside of LeBron and DeRozan: Gordon Hayward, Kyle Lowry, Buddy Hield, Evan Fournier, Gary Trent, Markelle Fultz, Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard. None of these guys are, really super tempting. And at the same time that you don't want to give DeMar DeRozan this massive contract, right? You also need to improve this team. And LeBron James opts out for a reason. He's not going to opt out just so he can take less money and the Lakers don't get anything done. That was a move so that the Lakers could go out and get some talent, could build a championship winner around him. They've run into the Nuggets twice now in the last 2 years and been thoroughly outclassed by them. They need to be able to compete with these top teams in the West, with the Nuggets, with the Timberwolves, with the Mavericks. These teams, aside from the Nuggets, who I think actually got a little worse, they got better, right? The Spurs got better. Not that they're going to be championship contenders right now, but there's all these young teams in the West that are continuing to get better every single year. The Thunder, they were the 1 seed. They got better. They added They added Isaiah Hartenstein from the Knicks. A little bit of an overpay, but a great get by them. They added Alex Caruso in a trade. Another great get for them. Definitely not an overpay. But this is a team that continues to improve while the Lakers just kind of sit there twiddling their thumbs. This is the offseason where LeBron James has given them some leeway. He's given them $50 million to work with, and they've gone out and they've gotten no one. And it's a little bit disappointing if you're sitting back and watching this. You're saying, hey, why couldn't we get anybody? I know we weren't targeting Paul George. I know we weren't targeting some of these guys, but why couldn't we go get Klay Thompson? And sign and trade is the answer there. But there's all these. Why couldn't we tempt James Harden away from the Clippers? Not that James Harden is, again, the right answer, and I wouldn't want to give big money to James Harden, but if you are the Lakers, you have to go out and you have to find someone that is going to elevate this team, is going to add scoring, and that guy might be Dalton Connect. It might be. But it also, there's a possibility that he takes a little bit to get ready. He's not going to translate immediately to the NBA, and they need to have some options. Take a flyer on Tyus Jones, maybe. He doesn't really fit too well into that offense. You can't be relying on D'Lo like they've been relying on the last season or two, right? He goes through stretches where he is the guy that you need him to be, but far too often, D'Angelo Russell just disappears. And you can't have that in the playoffs. And it doesn't matter. It's not like he disappears and then doesn't do anything. He disappears, gets cold, and still puts up 15 shots a game. He's going to, no matter what, play the same way. It's just the difference between a good game and a bad game is if the shots are falling. And those shots are never really guaranteed to fall with D'Lo. It's not a good spot to be in, and it's a little bit scary if you're the Lakers, right? You basically do whatever to keep LeBron happy, to keep him in LA. You draft his son, you bring in the coach that he wants, and he gives you this cap room, and you're not doing anything with it. It's a little disappointing, and I'm not sure. And DeMar DeRozan seems like the last option. Again, outside of a trade, they could go and trade maybe for Zach LaVine. That's a lot of money, but maybe they trade for him. Maybe there's rumors out there they trade for Lauri Markkanen. Now, that's a little too rich for my blood if I'm the Lakers. But they need to go get another guy if they want to stay competitive in a West that's only continuing to get younger and better. And right now, the Lakers are doing neither of those things. So we'll see what happens over the rest of the offseason with the Lakers. They've still got time. It's only been 2 days. DeMar DeRozan, if they don't get him, I don't really know what they're going to do. They'll bring back LeBron James and run it back, I guess. Maybe they go all out for a trade. Not that they have too many assets really to trade with anybody. So it's going to have to be. It's going to have to be a trade that isn't going to be for that elite guy. But this is a Lakers squad that could make a run. Anytime you have LeBron James, you have a shot. And DeMar DeRozan, again, he's the last guy that I'm looking at for this free agent board. And I'm saying he's the guy that's worth money. Everyone else is old or inconsistent. And if you're the Lakers, I feel like your hands are tied. You have to go get DeMar DeRozan at this point. But anyway, in our next segment, we're going to move out of the world of basketball. We're going to move into the world of baseball. We had a debut from the number one prospect in baseball last night. James Wood comes up for the Nationals. We'll talk about what he did, what it means for the future in Washington, D.C., and everything else surrounding the Washington Nationals and James Wood. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Marlins, where they are at. They've DFA'd Tim Anderson after he had a extremely disappointing season. We'll talk about that, talk about him, and everything else in the world of baseball coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just finished talking about LeBron James and the Lakers, what they might do in free agency after LeBron turns down his $50 million player option to free up space, and they have done just about nothing so far. We also talked about Cleveland Cavaliers extending Donovan Mitchell for a 3-year, $150 million contract earlier today, and the Celtics being up for sale after winning a championship, still paying everybody. Their 4 starters are making almost $900 million together. That's not including Kristaps Porzingis and the entire bench. So this is a very expensive team. We've talked ad nauseum a whole lot about the second apron and how it's affecting free agency. And we're seeing it affected in more than one way with the Celtics ownership now selling the team, which is kind of crazy. But We're going to move away from the world of basketball here, move into some baseball. It's been a bit since we had some baseball talk, but last night, the debut of a in the world of baseball. That is James Wood for the Washington Nationals completing the Juan Soto trade between the Padres and the Nats. James Wood against the Mets last night, 1 for 4, gets on base twice, strikes out 1 time, singles in his first ever at. We'll talk about his performance, talk about the game because it was kind of a ridiculous game, as well as what him being called up means for the future of the Washington Nationals. So stick around for that. We'll be before we get into that. Remember that if you would like to be on the show that we are, please go to GSMCSportsNetwork. With a tip or donation with a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen. You, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I will give it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all you guys sticking around, talking some sport with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Like I was saying, baseball James MLB debut yesterday. It was a solid debut. It wasn't anything special. The Nationals end up losing 9-7 in extra game. That was tied 3 heading into the 10th inning. The Mets also were 6 top frame, and the Nats get 4. It's a interesting move there by the Nationals to call James Wood here. And James Wood is a guy that was raking down in the minors. He's a guy that was 340 in the minors, just dominating where he goes. He plays center field. He's 7. He's one of the guys that are coming up and just are massive. More and more guys come up and tall. You don't see that too often in baseball. That these guys are tall as basketball players, generally just a little bit shorter. But James Wood, looks solid debut. He works the count. He only got once. One of the biggest concerns into this was his strikeout and weight. But he only struck out 1 time in the game. He walked once. He got a singles first ever at there. One right up past the diving Francisco Lindor. He was really good this game. It wasn't a plus performance. He had an opportunity to walk off in the ninth. That would be expecting a home run. Him being back there, him being up on the roster, it was a sign of time for the Washington Nationals. The Washington Nationals, after winning a World Series back in 2019, have kind of been bad, right? They traded everybody away in 2020, 2021, and really kicked off a rebuild. They had a really weak farm system. They had depleted it, and now they have one of the best farm systems ever. Or not ever in the entire MLB. And James Wood headlines that. They get him in the Juan Soto trade that also landed them Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams, as well as a couple other prospects. This is a team that the future looks really bright on. The farm system is really good for the Washington Nationals. They continue to have a lot of success with pitching. Dylan Cruz is going to come up soon, the number 2 pick in the MLB draft last season. He was the winner of the SEC Athlete of the Year award, a baseball player, after leading LSU with his teammate Paul Skeens, who, not sure if you heard of that guy. He's only dominating up in Pittsburgh. He should be up at the beginning of next season. He's headlining the Futures game that's going to be taking place at the All-Star weekend. So this is a Nats team. We get an idea of their timeline, right? They're starting to call up their young guys, which makes you think, hey, this is a team that thinks they're ready to go. This is a team that is expected to be ready to go next season. And they're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions. The roster that they have right now, I assume about 80% of it is going to be gone by the time by the time next season rolls around. They're going to have to make some tough decisions on the faces of the tank, right? Some guys like Joey Meneses, some guys like Kyber Ruiz might even be on the chopping block, a guy they got from the Dodgers with Josiah Gray. He also might be on the chopping block there. There's a lot of different ways that this rebuild can go for the Washington Nationals, and it's going to be really interesting to see. They've got about 5 pitchers. They've had a lot of young guys come up. DJ Hers has come up and been solid. He had a 13 strikeout game not too long ago. Mitchell Parker has been wonderful this season. We talked a little bit about him way back in March, I believe. Maybe it was May. Way back in May, we talked about Mitchell Parker and what he was able to do coming up. He's been incredible, very good. This pitching staff has been the lifeblood of this team, and as they reach the trade deadline, they're going to be one of those teams that has some valuable pieces to trade. And if they continue to be solid, I know the Mets won this last game with James Wood making his debut, but that's the grimace Mets, right? The Mets here. Let's pivot a little bit. Actually, the Mets ever since uh, ever since they had Grimace come out and throw that first pitch, they have been the hottest team in baseball, right? They've only lost 4 games in that stretch. 4 games since Grimace came out and pitched. It's been crazy. They've been incredible to watch. But they've just been really good. They've turned their season around, and who knows? Maybe they won't be sellers. Pete Alonso was a guy that I expected to sell, to be sold at the deadline, but the way that it's going right now, this is not a guy that will be traded. This is a Mets team that wants to make a wild card, sitting there at 500 after being 11 games below 500 not too long ago. But anyway, there is a lot more baseball going up around. The trade deadline is coming up in a little bit. We'll talk more about what teams should do in a little bit, but we're going to move on to the Marlins, a team that's been really bad. They just made a decision on one of their big free agent acquisitions in Tim Anderson. He officially got DFA'd today after an abysmal performance with the team. He gets let go. We'll talk a little bit about what that means for the Marlins, what that means for Tim Anderson, if he can rebound, and if a team will give him another chance this season. So stick around for all of that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Excuse me, if you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about James Wood, the number 1 prospect in baseball, making his debut for the Washington Nationals last night, going 1-for-4 with a single and a walk in a 9-7 loss in extra innings. We also talked a little bit. Excuse me. We also talked a little bit about the NBA and everything that's going on with it earlier in the show. We talked about the Lakers. LeBron James leaves, giving them cap space, giving them room to maneuver, and they have done absolutely nothing with it. We talked a little bit about what the solutions might be, whether that be DeMar DeRozan, the last impressive free agent left on the market, as well as maybe some possible trade candidates for them. Then we talked about Donovan Mitchell re-signing on a 3-year, $150 million deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. We talked about how this was kind of a little bit of a peace offering. There were rumblings that everyone in Cleveland would go their separate ways, including the players, the coaches, and everyone would leave Cleveland. But instead, they sign a 3-year, $150 million deal to return and potentially build on what was all in all a successful season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. In this segment here, we're going to finish up some baseball, talk a little bit about Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson, who signed a 1-year, $5 million deal with the Marlins, has been atrocious. Through 65 games, he's put up career worst numbers in almost every single category. He officially gets DFA'd. We'll talk about if he can rebound on what was supposed to be a rebound season and what teams might end up picking up a guy like Tim Anderson, if he'll even get picked up at all. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to talk a little bit about the Marlins and Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson got DFA'd by the Marlins, designated for assignment. Any team can pick him up off waivers. I doubt it. He'll probably clear waivers and become a free agent where I do expect him to get picked up by another team. I do expect another team to take a flyer on a guy in Tim Anderson who, well, again, he played 65 games this season. He's only hitting .214, no home runs, 9 RBIs, 68 strikeouts, and just 7 walks. He hasn't really been himself. The White Sox, right? That's who he was playing for the last couple years before going to Miami. They're bad. Maybe there's a reunion there. I mean, they remember good memories. He won a batting title in 2019 and made 2 All-Star teams in 2021 and 2022. He has the ability to be good. He's 31. It's not like he just fell off a cliff right at once he turned 30. But this is a guy that I think needs a hard reset. And we thought that might be going to Miami, leaving Chicago. But over in Chicago, he had 282, almost 100 home runs over 8 seasons. This is a guy that. Excuse me. I apologize. This is a guy that has the potential to be a really, really good baseball player and a premium position that is shortstop. There's plenty of teams, I believe, that would give Tim Anderson a shot. We talked about the White Sox there. They need help in just about every single way. This is his second straight disappointing season. So maybe not his best, but he does have the ability to turn it around. I truly do believe that. There are plenty of teams out there that could take a low risk, high reward flyer on a guy like Tim Anderson. One of those teams, the Dodgers, for instance. Mookie Betts is on the IL. He has, a broken hand after taking a hit by pitch. Maybe bring him in not to be the number 1 shortstop, but back up Miguel Rojas, who's been playing a lot of shortstop for the Dodgers recently. Give them some options to move people around the infield. Give him a chance. He doesn't have to be the number one guy over there. Another team that could use a shortstop, a contending team that could use a shortstop. You know, the the Pirates. Pirates could use a shortstop here. There's a lot of options. Again, he's not going to come in and be a starter. Not after what he's done to start this season off. He's going to come in and he's going to be a high upside bench bat guy that can come in and play a little bit of shortstop. Mason Wynn, who maybe he comes in and plays a little bit of backup shortstop for the Cardinals, who are looking to add right now. Again, it's not going to be expensive. Even if you pick him up off waivers, it would only be a $5 million charge, which not bad. Not bad for a guy that again has the upside of a batting champion just 5 years ago. He was an all-star just 2 seasons ago. He's been abysmal these last couple seasons, but I really do believe that there are going to be teams that, will take a chance on a guy like Tim Anderson. Give him a shot at bouncing back. It is a it is a huge uh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. We are going to move into the we're gonna move into our final segment here of the show today. Talk a little bit about some soccer. The U.S. men's national team got eliminated in embarrassing fashion from the Copa America Cup, a cup that they're hosting in Kansas City. They get eliminated in the group stage. We'll talk a little bit about that and much more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've talked some baseball, we've talked some basketball. We started off our show talking about the Cavaliers extending Donovan Mitchell, a 3-year, $150 million deal, as well as the Celtics on the market. So if you've got some money for an NBA team, there's your in right there. The Celtics, coming off a championship, are apparently for sale. They have an insanely expensive team, but good place to get in, I guess. We also talked a little bit about the Lakers and what they might do with the rest of free agency. They've kind of been sitting on their hands. They haven't gotten a lot done. LeBron James opted out of his player option, saving them $50 million, presumably, so that they could go get another guy, someone that can help them win a championship. But they've done nothing with it. And right now, the pool is looking really, really low. So maybe they get DeMar DeRozan or they make a trade. We'll see what happens. It's just not the way that I think they pictured this offseason going so far. Then we moved into some baseball. We talked about James Wood making his debut for the Washington Nationals, the number one prospect on a lot of MLB rankings. He was 1 for 4 on the day in a Nationals lost in extra innings. Their timeline is moving up. They should be calling everybody up by next season, so that's very exciting in the nation's capital. And then we just finished talking about Tim Anderson, him being DFA'd by the Miami Marlins after his second straight dismal season. I believe he's someone that can bounce back, and I don't think he'll stay on waivers for too long. I could see a team like the Dodgers picking him up and giving him a chance at shortstop, not everyday shortstop, but giving him a chance there to at least fill in for a little bit while Mookie Betts is on the IL. But we're going to close off our show today talking a little bit about some soccer. The U.S. men's national team just got embarrassed at home in the Copa America Cup. They lose 1-0 to Uruguay, officially getting eliminated in the group stage. We'll talk about everything that has to do with that. Kind of a little bit embarrassing if you're the United States. We'll talk about that in just a second. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you have to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everyone around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to move into the world of soccer as the U.S. men's national team officially was eliminated from the group stage of the Copa America Cup, a tournament that they were hosting. And, you know, this is not a good look for the U.S. This is the first time since the group stage was introduced that the host nation didn't make it to the knockout round. First time since 1975. You know, they hadn't. This breaks a 19 consecutive tournament streak where the national team has made it past the group stage, including the World Cup back in 2022. And there's a lot of reasons for this. You know, they haven't played their best. They've been really underperforming. A lot of people are putting it on the coach. You can blame the ref a little bit for the loss to Uruguay, but that doesn't, you know, explain everything for why they were eliminated in the group stage. They still had to play a whole round robin tournament, only winning one game there is embarrassing, quite honestly. You know, there was the yellow card incident. If you were watching, the ref pulled out a yellow card and then let the play continue, which is ridiculous. You can't have that happen. Luckily, that didn't result in a goal, but their offense, they weren't really able to generate anything. They had 3 shots in the entire game. In fact, moving through the entire group stage, they only had 14 shots, which ridiculous. You need to be able to generate offense. You know, the goalie was playing great. The defense was playing fine. And they were winning these tight games, but they weren't able to generate any kind of offense. They were, out of the 16 teams, they were ranked 8th. And again, I think a lot of the blame is on can be put on Coach Greg Berhalter. He was fired, or they let his contract run out after the World Cup in a game that against the Netherlands that he ended up getting blown out in after, you know, having so much hype around them advancing into the out of the group stage there. You know, American men's soccer finally took that next step to being good again. But they instead take their next they rehire him, right? And I think that was a mistake. There were plenty of calls to let Berhalter walk, not bring him back in. People were happy when they didn't pick up the contract, but there were reports from multiple sources saying, "Hey, they're not going to fire him even after this loss. This is way below expectations, but it seems like they're not going to fire him because the locker room loves him." And you can have you can that's an important thing when you're building an international team, right? It's important to have a locker room that rallies around a coach, rallies around a manager, but it's not enough. You need to be able to see results. You need to be able to go out on the field, and you need to be able to say, "Hey, this is what we expect, and this is what we're getting." He can't even get out of the group stage in the Copa America, and I mean, I don't know what they expect to happen in the World Cup if the U.S. can't. This was a tournament that they were, very, very much expected to at least perform well in. On the other side of the coin, like Kelsey says, Alex Morgan, the women's national team is going to be great. Alex Morgan misses the cut, doesn't make the team, which does suck. We're seeing like it's both a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing because she's an icon for U.S. women's soccer, right? But it's a good thing because we have all this great talent, right? We have this great talent that's able to push out a legend like Alex Morgan, and the team will still be great without her. So there is a little bit of there's a little bit of a silver lining there that she didn't make the team. But again, it's still going back to the men's national team. It's just embarrassing this performance here, and I think they should fire the head coach. Again, there are reports that they're not going to do that. They want to keep the locker room together, but the World Cup isn't until 2026, and that is what they're gearing up for. If there ever was going to be a time to fire a head coach, it's a couple years before you host a World Cup, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you can't advance out of the group stage in a World Cup that you do host. So it is a little concerning that the national team didn't make it out of the Copa America, and it's not a good sign. I mean, like I said, I think the future of soccer in America, both men's and women's, is super bright. And I don't think there's really too much cause for concern, but something has to be done, and it can't just be blaming the refs, because regardless of some questionable penalty calls, the goal that was scored was definitely offsides, and it wasn't reviewed. It wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have advanced anyway. They would have lost by goal differential, but it's just not a performance that you can repeat, and there needs to be some kind of consequence. And I think firing Berhalter there is the right answer. And I don't know if people in charge of the U.S. national teams are going to end up doing that, which really is a shame. But we got a couple years until the World Cup. Hopefully they can improve from here. But anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Hold on, before we go, Eric says passion and appreciation for soccer in the U.S. compared to other countries isn't that prominent. Does the U.S. national team belong amongst the discourse of the best soccer teams in the world? Not yet. I mean, there's definitely growing talent. I mean, for the women's soccer team, absolutely. But for the men's, not yet. I mean, I think they had their highest ranking. They cracked the top 20 before the World Cup last season, and they've got a lot of talent. They've got players from clubs out in Europe in the Champions Leagues. Pulisic, for instance, is playing, in a top soccer club around the world. So we're getting some talent into these into these top tier leagues around the world. So, you're getting more talent, and you're getting them from more, I guess, respectable places than the MLS. But no, I don't think they belong among the best soccer teams in the world. They are getting there, though. There's been drastic improvements from where we were just 10 years ago. You remember back to the 2014 World Cup, right? That that team was Tim Howard and nothing else. And there's been drastic improvements since then. But anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tune in tomorrow. We'll talk about everything going on in the world of sports. I appreciate you guys. Be back